Hello, and welcome to episode 97 of Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you didn't want the answers to. I'm Sean.
And I'm Vib, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about.
But, like Taravangian on a good day, we're hoping we've swung towards genius for this one. Bad day Taravangian, much like Vib, doesn't know what a bridge is. I'm really confused.
Why?
Is that out of the book that he doesn't know what a bridge is? Is that just you trying and failing to be funny?
Be funny if you get it, but it's fine. It's not for everybody.
Sweet.
You're proving my point there, really. No, I think it said that when Taravangian's got one of his bad days, he literally is like drooling in a corner.
Yeah, no, like bottom tier Taravangian is a proper like drooling moron.
Now, I wasn't really going to start here. We're obviously talking about Words of Radiance, in case it's not clear from the title that you clicked on. Assuming we put Words of Radiance in the title, would that be?
We should. It would be sensible to.
It'd be irresponsible of us not to do that.
We should also flag from here spoilers for both Way of Kings and Words of Radiance.
And because we can't trust Sean, probably the rest of Stormlight and the Cosmere in general.
Quite a lot. Quite a lot. Like, there's a good chance I spoil, like, Superman or
everything.
Something. Yeah. Like, the latest Transformers film just by mistake.
The latest Transformer film? Is there a new one?
What's the most? I don't know. There's one that's got King Arthur in it that was baffling.
Anyway, let's not go
there.
Yeah,
that's a dangerous road.
Much like in Way of Kings, when we had the whole quantum physics discussion, where Spren takes on the shape of something that's measured. The whole section on Taravangian's friend doing her study, essentially kind of come out with a logarithmic scaling, which I thought was quite funny, that his intelligence is measured on a sort of log 10 scale.
Yes.
And effectively trying to do distribution statistics, which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah, because every step is twice as, or whatever it is, isn't it?
Is it twice or 10 times? I forget. Maybe it's a log 2 scale, actually. Yeah, I think you're right. It's exponential. Simple.
I don't know. But yeah, they almost draw a bell curve as they're talking about it for you.
It's like Brandon Sanderson clearly just has these moments where he has to get some sort of science idea out of his mind and onto paper for whatever reason.
I think, and this isn't a huge criticism of Brandon Sanderson, but it might be a tiny one. I think he probably spends too much time on Wikipedia.
Maybe too much time on Wikipedia, definitely too much time on Reddit.
Yeah, I mean, he's an active participant in the Cosmere Reddit, which is quite funny.
I was actually doing some research, quote unquote, earlier. There was the first time I've ever seen him in the wild. But he sort of started off saying, "I wasn't going to get involved, but I'm going to get involved now."
Here I come.
Cue wall of text because it's me, as he said.
Yeah.
Yes. Words of Radiance.
So
I think the place to start is with your little teaser at the end of our Way of Kings thing, which where he said, "Watch Yasna closely." Now, I'm still not convinced that I actually know what on earth you were referring to.
So
that gets revealed in Words of Radiance. So
what I was referring to in Way of Kings was soul casting, and the fact that Yasna soul casts without a soul caster, and everything that we are told. Slow down. In Way of Kings and through Words of Radiance, we are told more and more about how things like soul casters work. And none of that is true for the way that Yasna soul casts. Because Yasna doesn't soul cast. Yasna uses like radiant powers to soul cast.
But even Shallan points that out in Way of Kings, right? Where she's like, things are not usually meant to sort of do that when she kills those guys in the street.
She does it through range or whatever it is. Yeah. But that's my point about watch Yasna closely. There's lots of tiny little hints sprinkled through Way of Kings that Yasna is like more than she's letting on, but you only really see them on the second read through. And then obviously you can't really watch her closely in Words of Radiance because she dies in the second chapter or whatever.
Yeah, so this was interesting, right? It's sort of when I started reading, I think my first comment to you was, "What the fuck?"
Yes.
Because to recap, I was not a fan of Shallan in Way of Kings.
But you did like Shallan as a way of following Yasna.
Yes, I very much did. And then, of course, what happens is that Yasna seemingly gets taken away. Now, I remember saying to you, I'm 100% confident that that's just not, that she's not dead. And that dropped rapidly. I don't really remember why it dropped so rapidly. I think because Shallan was trying to convince you that she was dead.
Yeah. And Shallan convinces herself that she's dead.
That's a better way of putting it, actually. Maybe, yeah, she convinces herself she's dead. But she doesn't really allow herself to grieve, which I did think was weird. There is a scene where she kind of lets it happen,
but by the time you get to the end of the book, you understand why she doesn't give herself time to grieve, which is that she's so fundamentally damaged that if she opens herself up to any actual real emotions at all, she'll just cease to function.
Yeah. But no, what I thought was interesting, this was the research I was doing, is, was Sanderson meant to have given us clues? Because it was a bit unclear to me, right? Because we obviously know that Yasna is who Yasna is.
Yeah.
And she can visit Shadesmar.
Yeah.
Which was my theory, that she'd probably just gone there. And he does say in this Reddit post, she wasn't meant to be a fake out, but the beta readers just didn't like it when it was too obvious that she just left.
Yeah, so I think
he overcompensated a bit, which
yeah,
I thought was sort of fine. I think her not being in Words of Radiance is probably quite important.
I think so, because she's so much more advanced along the path than the other Radiants are. She's so much further along the path than Shallan is, but even she's so much further along the path than Kaladin is as well. And you need her to be away from the plains so that Shallan can bumble around and get things wrong and learn rather than just be taught.
Yeah, no, certainly from Shallan, because I think her character growth is obviously means that it's the main focal point of the book, really.
Yeah.
And I'm intrigued to know who will be the POV for Oathbreaker. I mean, based on the cover, I can probably guess, but
it's not a secret. It's Dalinar for Oathbringer.
Oh, it's Dalinar. Okay, I would have said probably Yasna, actually, because she's
no, you don't get Yasna's going to be Yasna's too in everything.
Yeah,
so she can't be your POV character at this point. I think she's in the back 5, actually.
I wonder if she knows Dalinar as a Radiant, because in my head it's like, if she shows up to the Shattered Plains right now, she's like, "Oh, Kaladin, by the way, nice Radiance you got there." And hey, Uncle Dalinar, maybe just ask the Stormfather for his support.
Yeah, so Dalinar has bound the Stormfather by the end of Words of Radiance.
The word bound is perhaps a bit strong. The Stormfather doesn't seem to want to be bound, but the Stormfather is like, he says, yes, "I will not be a sword to you."
Because they do the closing, the end of the book is them all in Urithiru, and Dalinar is there as the bondsmith. Yeah, that's right.
Which I mean, the whole ending of the book felt a bit rushed to me. I don't know if rushed is the right word.
In a Sanderson book.
Yeah, because it's obviously this massive crescendo, but I don't think he gives the crescendo enough time to really hit you, right? Because all of a sudden it's like, oh, Dalinar's also Radiant, and his Spren is the Stormfather, and the Stormfather is like, that's cool and all, but I'm just going to go and do my own thing there.
Yeah. Part of the problem is that there is stuff about each of the orders that comes out in later books that makes, like, for example, what the Stormfather says make much more sense.
Sure.
Right, but you're right. It's weird because we see Kaladin attain the second ideal.
Yes, which is the
Silspear,
quote unquote, reincarnates.
She reincarnates, but then she becomes the spear.
Yeah, she becomes his shard blade
weapon. Yeah,
shard weapon. Yeah, a better way of saying it. Well, she becomes more than that, but one of the forms she can assume is that. I thought that was an elegant reveal about Shallan's shard blade, because for a while I was like, what the fuck? How has this happened? But yeah, obviously it makes total sense. But no, I thought the ending.
But yeah, this is my point. Right?
Too much went on.
You get the second ideal, and at the same time you get Dalinar bonding the Stormfather.
And that happens quite a bit later. That's almost like right at the end. But
it's all part of the same crescendo, though, I think.
It's because Dalinar is like nearly... so Dalinar gets nearly killed, right? As if he gets kicked into the sky by Szeth. And then Kaladin shows up in his sort of classic, the hero has arrived, everybody.
I am here to save everyone.
I am here to save the day. Then Shallan finds Urithiru.
Yes.
They all go through. The scale gets a bit fucked up in my head here.
You have the Everstorm.
You have the Everstorm.
You have the death of Shoreblood. Just in the middle of all this, he just kills a horse, which is pretty shitty.
Yeah, just
out of nowhere.
Why? but well, maybe it does actually work, because I think the most jarring thing for me that kind of just almost happens, just as an aside, is that Aeladin just kills Sadeas. You're like, really... what? Hang on, what just happened?
I am not my father.
It's through the eye socket, like, mate.
And then he punts him out a window.
Yeah, punts him out the window and washes off the evidence. It's like, wow, this guy's been
just thought about this.
A dark horse all along. So a lot of shit happens, and then obviously, man, I don't. We talked about Wit a bit last time, didn't we? I don't know, because Wit's the character who introduces or reintroduces us to Jasnah.
Mm-hmm.
Him knowing so much is odd, if nothing else.
So he will be a flashback character at some point. But you've had Are You the Almighty? You've had from Dalinar at this point, haven't you? Dalinar straight up asks Wit, are you God? And Wit's like, no, but he bought me a beer once or something.
Yeah. When Wit sort of reappears and then leaves again, because I think Wit was telling him all sorts of shit was about to go down, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's the am I a hypocrite?
Yeah.
And Wit's like, yes, clearly, but I don't see that as a bad thing. I really like Wit, but I really like Wit because he makes the world feel so much bigger.
I was wondering this, and again, maybe I just can't get away from the whole Cosmere thing.
Yeah, because Wit is a Cosmere character.
Yeah.
He's not he is a Stormlight character, and he has his most of his characterization is in the Stormlight, but he's a character across. He's in every single Cosmere book. Wit is in every single Cosmere book. In one way.
The good thing
is
that Sanderson in his introduction, or his acknowledgements in any way, to the start of Oathbringer, there's talk about this a little bit, right? That you can read the Stormlight Archives, you can read Mistborn, you can read all the other things, and they're standalone stories for which you don't need to know the other books, but they are all interconnected.
Stops being true, though.
I sort of wondered that, because like you just take one look at Wit and.
So,
and to sizzle a future discussion of ours, which may or may not be a hot take, as I said to you the other day, is that the Cosmere clearly is just a bad god kills good god, and that's the entire arc.
I think Wit works as a standalone character in all of the series that he's in, but I do think there's a challenge around how long it remains true that each of the series are standalone. Mistborn Era 2, for example, is not standalone. It's not. Huge bits of it don't make sense, particularly towards the back end, if you haven't read Stormlight. Right, you've had
but that you can almost allow, right? Because it's an Era 2 thing.
True. You've got characters in Stormlight that don't make sense. Well, I suppose they do make sense, but you probably get them later. You get them more in Oathbringer anyway. But we start to get introduced to characters from other series as well. And it just all becomes a bit confusing and hard to keep straight. And I found this quite a lot with Wind and Truth, that almost the books get so big because Sanderson doesn't know how to write tightly. And a lot of people love that, and I think his books are great. I enjoy reading Sanderson. I will read at some point everything he's ever written, but I haven't read, for example, any of the Secret Projects. I own them somewhere on a Kindle or something, but I haven't read them because it's already all too big and too complicated and too convoluted, and I just need him to tighten in and go back to telling like the really tight stories that he was telling in Era 1 of Mistborn, for example.
I think you've hit something on. I mean, we've thrown our script out the window completely.
We'll come back to it. But
you've hit something. You've hit on something poignant for me as well, and we talked about it when we did Way of Kings. I don't want to say I struggled through the book, but there were definitely moments in the middle of it where I thought, man, I could be reading something else, you know?
Everything's in all of his books are so backloaded.
They are, but it didn't bother me in Mistborn so much. And I wonder if it all comes down to Vin, that she was just somehow more compelling.
Potentially.
And I think, right? To get my biggest sort of gripe straight away, I think that maybe Vin was delightfully imperfect and actually didn't know anything about anything, really. And she was plucky, and you could sort of get behind her. Whereas I think my biggest problem is almost that I think Kaladin's too perfect. He's almost flawless, and he's way too strong and powerful. Shallan in this book, I think, instantly jumps to she's meant to face all these struggles and then instantly becomes just majorly OP. And I get that perhaps on reflection, when I read the next few books in the series, given that they are Radiants, and I'm sure the Radiants have to deal with bigger challenges, I might look back at that and go, well, that makes total sense. But now reading this book, it feels just a bit jarring, right? Because before we had Yasin, who felt sort of larger than life. Now we have everybody's just insanely overpowered.
Yeah, I know. I think that's fair. I think Kaladin being too perfect is an interesting challenge, and you can almost. He's one of those really frustrating characters where his biggest flaw is that he cares too much or whatever. And as you move through the Stormlight Archive, Kaladin's flaws become more and more apparent because he is flawed. And you're kind of here seeing him at his absolute peak. So
sure, it could be that.
Not in terms of power, but in terms of sort of, I hesitate to say characterization. That's not quite right. But this is like prime Kaladin. This is the best iteration of Kaladin from a characterization perspective.
But it's a somewhat frustrating way of writing a book series, right? Yeah. Where you're like, you're meant to sort of get invested in this, and I think for a lot of people, investment means sort of being able to relate to characters. And it reminded me a lot of Patrick Rothfuss's
you've written that
Kingkiller Chronicle, right? He reminds me a bit of Quoth, who often gets, he's often said to be too ridiculously perfect, and I can see where people come from with that. But I think he weirdly actually has more open flaws than Kaladin.
He has more open flaws than Kaladin, but also, I might be being. I think a lot of people don't realize this about the Kingkiller Chronicles, but the Kingkiller Chronicles is Quoth telling his story to someone.
Sure. Yes.
So
sure.
And Quoth is a storyteller. He tells us that almost the first thing he tells us in the first book is my people invented stories. Right, so you've got to read the Kingkiller Chronicles through that lens, because the Quoth that we see running the Wayspring Inn is very different from the Kvothe that Kvothe tells us about at the university, for example.
And sadly, we will never hear the conclusion.
We will never know. We will never know which king Kvothe killed.
Quite. But no, Kaladin frustrated me a little bit, and then...
Yeah, I think that's fair. Kaladin's self-righteousness is infuriating throughout all the books, and his almost holier-than-thou purity is infuriating throughout all the books. And I think nowhere is this seen more obviously than with his reactions and conversations with Dalinar as compared with Moash. The Dalinar-Kaladin relationship infuriates me constantly in Words of Radiance.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
Because Dalinar is the most powerful man in the world before he becomes a bondsmith.
Yes.
Like, he just is. And then you've got Kaladin.
Well, certainly in Alethkar.
And Alethkar is the most powerful nation in the world.
So they would like to think.
We can have an argument about the God King of Tokir or whoever he is, but what's the point of that? What you've completely derailed me.
Nice win.
Dalinar is a phenomenally powerful, phenomenally important man. He's in his late 50s. He's got 2 difficult grown-up children that he's dealing with. He's got Elhokar, who he's grooming for rule, and also he takes the time to listen to Kaladin's shit all the time. And when Kaladin tells him about Amaram, and Dalinar goes, okay, I'll need to look into that because he's like a really important person, so I can't just do it. And Kaladin's reaction is, oh, they're all the same. And I'm like, he listened to you. He listened to you, and he said he'd do something, and you say you trust him. So trust him. And then it turns out that actually he was doing something because he laid a trap for Amaram.
And again, this was frustrating.
And he doesn't have to tell you that.
Yeah, and this was frustrating because again, there was like 0 repercussions for Kaladin's character off the back of that. He at no point reflects and says, "Oh, that was a bit shitty of me."
There.
And Dalinar somehow doesn't hold it against him either. Like, sure, he rots in jail for like a couple of weeks, but even then, we learn that Adolin sort of does it out of sympathy too. Like, come on, I fucking hell, the guy is a bit too perfect, and I was. I don't want to say I was very glad when Syl died, because that was wrong, because I think Syl's a fantastic character. But I thought, oh, well, now Kaladin actually is going to face some hardships.
Yeah.
And is actually going to have to rely on something. And then, granted, the way she comes back, it's a fantastic scene. It's really well done, and it is epic, right? And I think the Kaladin we get at the end of that, like, wow, what a sort of classic fantasy hero.
Yeah.
But equally, fuck me, that guy just gets off. He can just do anything he wants, right? And be totally fine. It's sort of, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I think about him. From him being sort of my main, yeah, the guy I was like rooting for in book 1 to now being like, man, this guy just needs to be taken down a peg.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's just because the focal point of Words of Radiance is Shallan and not him.
Potentially. And there's a lot of excuse me, something in my throat. There's a lot of very different work that Sanderson needs to do with Shallan to endear her to us, because she was so insufferable during book 1.
Do you think he's been successful in that?
I think that Shallan becomes understandable by the end of book 2. She's never going to be my favourite character. But I like her in book 2 more than I like her in book 1.
Yeah. I thought her flashbacks were very interesting.
Yep.
She was quite personable. You could sort of understand it. I think the issue was sort of that the big quote unquote reveal.
Yeah.
Wasn't particularly much of a reveal.
She killed her father. It's a
Well, she
pretty
killed her
big...
mother, I think, was the bigger reveal.
Well, yeah, she
But I thought that was
she killed her
very
mother
apparent from
with
the
a
beginning.
shard blade.
Yeah, that less so. And the shard blade being pattern, and obviously I think her last line is something like, "I hate you."
I hate you. I know.
Yeah, I know, and you will kill me for it, and then you'll have your revenge. That's interesting, right? Although even then, it sort of exemplifies the fact again that she's still very young, right? Because it's
that's
not
the
to
thing.
sound like a Second Amendment nut, but the weapon doesn't kill someone; it's the person wielding it who does. So.
And there's more to learn about Shallan as well. To be
her killing
fair.
her father in such a cold-blooded way was quite something. Like, tried to poison him, and he's like, "Oh, he's waking up." Smother.
just kill him while I sing him the lullaby he sings me. That's not dark at all.
And that actually biggest gut punch that in the end it turns out, because that's the bit I hadn't quite put together. I was like, I think Shallan did kill her mother, but I did also think her father was probably quite a terrible person. It turns out that he was just so unbelievably grief-stricken, being like, what the fuck?
I have no idea. I have no mental heuristic through which to deal with what happened.
Yeah. So you sort of feel with him, especially because all his sons do sound utterly, utterly useless.
Except for Helleran.
Who then gets himself killed by Kaladin, which is quite funny. But yeah, so on that topic, right, because we sort of learn at the end that he's a member of one of these seemingly endless now, maybe secret orders?
Helleran was a Skybreaker.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, he's a Skybreaker. It's like, okay, so all these factions, that's just going to get introduced right at the end. Yeah, sure, we have the Ghost Bloods and things like that. But then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we have all these factions. We have Radiance. We have...
so these are the 10 orders.
Yeah, and then we have the
Sons of Honor?
Nah, the Voidbringers. That's what I'm trying to think of. Voidbringers. It's just all a bit much, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it kind of is. I don't know. The Skybreakers thing I'll park because that's a different question. But I don't know that on top of like a globe-spanning nation versus nation conflict, I also needed quite as many secret societies.
It's a bit too much, I think.
Because you've got, like you said, you've got the Ghost Bloods, who are weird, and then you've got the Sons of Honor, which is Amaram's lot, who are sort of not really explained at all. And then you've got the Taravangian's lot, the diagram, and then you've got these pockets of radiance, and then you've got like the man in black who hunts burgeoning radiance. And
but am I remembering right that Amaram knows about the diagram? He mentions it, I believe.
He does. Amaram is weird.
Amaram is very weird.
Amaram is very, very weird.
That's a great scene, by the way, when Kaladin challenges him and then probably gets thrown in jail.
Yeah, it's really, really funny.
Like, Elhokar, you're a fucking idiot, but sometimes you've got your moments.
Yeah, that's really, really, really funny.
And everyone's just like, you fucking twat.
It's really,
and then he gets forgiven because, of course, it's Kaladin. But no, the secret orders are a bit much because he like Sanderson throws them in, dangles them in front of you, and then does nothing with them. Right?
Yeah. Do you have any idea what the Ghost Bloods want?
Not a clue.
No.
Not a clue. And what really bothers me, and I guess it's a sort of classic secret society trope, right? But they're all like, they all know so much.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But like you haven't, what's really frustrating is that you haven't missed it. That it's not a throwaway line or breadcrumbed or anything like that. It's just not in the book. There's no way at the end of Words of Radiance to know what the Ghost Bloods are after. At all. And that's just bad. I just don't think that's very good.
I agree. It's sort of just building factions for having factions' sake.
Yeah.
Right? Because it muddies the water. And I get that things maybe want to be more complicated than Voidbringer versus Radiant, right? But it's just now there's too much going on.
But that's like, because you almost, what we're crying out for as a society is a really simple good versus evil fantasy book, right? That's the absolute core. That's why Lord of the Rings has such enduring cultural relevance. Is the conflict is simple. The themes are deep, but the conflict is simple. The conflict in the Stormlight Archive is so complicated when it promises being so simple.
So Sanderson himself would disagree with you there. I mean, I did hear him speak a couple of weeks ago, giving the Tolkien lecture. Actually.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Which was fascinating. He's clearly very, in the know man.
Yeah, I'm being very critical of him. He's probably one of my favorite active authors at the moment. Like he writes. I love his books, but because we're having these deep conversations in them, there are bits about them that frustrate me.
And I think I don't necessarily agree with you in terms of what I want is a good versus evil story. I think there's a time and a place for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't mind something that's a bit more nuanced and complicated. But what I sort of and maybe now's the time we talk about Eshonai and all that sort of jazz. It's like, are we setting up a good versus evil story, or are we not? Are we setting up a good versus evil story in which there are also multiple factions who are morally grey, or are we not? Is everybody just good? Is everybody just bad? Is this the classic, aren't humans nicely flawed? Yeah, great, thanks. I don't need that in my fantasy books. We know that.
Well done. Yeah, Eshonai is a very...
Yeah, let's talk about it, because I remember you... When I said, I've just had my first interlude from the perspective of a Parshendi, you were like, I hated those. So what did you not like about it?
Did I say I hated them? That's probably quite
Maybe
strong.
Not hate, but you were like, I think you weren't a fan, is what you said.
No, I wasn't. And I don't know why. I don't really know what they were trying to do. Like, I understand the story that we're being told through them of the bringing of the Everstorm and the Venli's secret research and all of that. That I understand. But what I don't understand is why we spend so much time having the Parshendi. I don't want to say humanized. That's not quite right. But the conflict is made really weird by the time that we spend with the Parshendi in Narok. And it becomes very colonial almost in the way that it's presented, which I just don't know that I was looking for. It's not
Neil.
There's an enormous power imbalance between the Alethi and the Parshendi that is only really made evident when we spend time with the Parshendi in Narok. And I guess I don't...
But I thought that was the interesting thing about it.
Oh?
Because so for the record, you said, I really didn't like those the first time.
Maybe.
Flashbacks.
Yeah.
So the reason I liked it was because it started to give us an insight into what the Parshendi are, aside from Shen, who I thought was interesting, or R'lain, sorry.
R'lain, yeah.
Who I think is a really fascinating character, potentially. We don't know that much about him yet.
I really like R'lain.
But I think what Eshonai gives you is that realization that these aren't void bringers, right? They're not your evil orc.
No,
that,
and I think
you can kill them and that's fine. No one gives a shit.
I think that realization
wants to tell you.
I think that realization is valuable, but I almost feel like we're getting there. You were getting there with Dalinar anyway, and in a sense, I wonder whether the realization is more valuable if you come to the realization that their life is valuable without having to be shown that they're proper people.
I can see where you're coming from, but I actually was already convinced at that point.
Maybe.
From Dalinar's musings. What I think it allows you to understand is that these guys are just are regular people and they're not inherently evil.
Yeah.
But they clearly believe something else, right? Because they, and then it becomes a sort of this battle between two types of spren, seemingly, and the sort of Everstorm versus Highstorm, like two different flavors of gods. And that makes you want to try and understand why, right? As in, and the next question is, we sort of tend to assume, odium and that side of things is like the end of the world, right? That's sort of how it's always talked about. But if these guys are trying to sort of restore that element of power, it can't really be the end of the world unless they're being misled. So I thought that was just interesting, right? I mean, I don't have any answers to these kind of questions.
No, they're
and Shania, who's clearly not dead because no one ever dies in these books, I'm sure will tell us in the next one.
Yeah, no one is ever dead. That's
fuck's sake, Sanderson, just kill someone.
That's
except for Sadias, because he needed to die. He's probably also not dead.
Even Kelsier isn't dead.
God. He's like the opposite of George Martin. Although we also know that no one dies there.
Everyone's safe.
Everyone's safe. So no, I did like the interludes. I sort of liked all they grew on me a little bit because I wasn't sure about them in the first book. I like a lot of them now.
I think I can hear what you're saying. I don't entirely agree with you, but I could see where you're coming from. My funniness about it is down to that, like the value of the realization is greater if you come to the realization independent of having to be shown that they're normal, that they're just normal people, right? There's a little bit of that didn't sit fantastically with me, but
I don't know. I still liked it because for me there was this big question of what the fuck was the whole peace thing about. I guess we still don't know. As in, when they came to Alethkar to sign some sort of peace treaty, and then we're like, oh, let's just kill the king and get out of here. Okay.
No, and that's that continues to be a mystery.
Yeah. So, who haven't we talked about yet that we might need to discuss? Renarin?
How I was going to say how excellent is Adolin, but how weird is Renarin?
Yeah, well, Renarin's a radiant, right? So of course, go fucking figure. Who isn't at this point, right? Just
Adolin. Adolin is not
hitting a radiant. Adolin very clearly isn't a radiant, and that is going to be hella interesting.
Yeah, it's a really nice setup, isn't it?
It's a really nice setup.
In any other fantasy thing. Yeah, sorry. The person who in any other fantasy book would probably be a secondary protagonist and would be super duper magic special in his own right just isn't. And it's great.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. What annoys me is what I really don't want in this book is a genuine love triangle, okay? You can see it coming from a mile away. What I wanted from this book and where I thought we were really going was two guys don't really like each other because one seemingly hates all light eyes for whatever reason. Yeah. And I don't think Adolin actually really had anything had much against Count. I think he was just a bit more like, who the fuck is this random guy who sort of swanned in and saves the day?
Yeah.
But their like broship was really growing, and I was really rooting for them. And I can just see that it's all going to come to some horrible clash with Shallan in the middle, and I just don't think I want.
I think
I'm gonna be bros.
I think I'm gonna give you the gentlest of spoilers here and say you don't have to worry too much.
Okay, good.
You don't have to worry too much.
I want them to be bros, or even better, catch Shallan out the picture, just the two of them.
Just poly it up.
Yeah, well, or I guess, or that. Yeah, that also works. But you don't need Shallan. Shallan just bring everybody down. She's too depressed.
You say she's
she did also
depressed.
Kill her mother and her father. I think that's pretty illegal in most cultures. I'm going to say.
You say she's too depressed, but you also have to remember there's the scene with her and Kaladin in the High Storm, where Kaladin's like, oh, you don't know what it's like to be broken, and then Shallan gives this really like detailed description of what it means to be chronically, horrifically depressed. And Kaladin's just like looking at her like, oh my God, how do you know? And then he's like, she did the most beautiful thing you ever saw. She smiled. And I'm like, that right there
That was powerful writing, in
yeah,
fairness. And it brought me back to the book, because I think that was around the time where I was like, man, it's a bit of a slog.
Starting to do it. And then you get that moment. That moment in the cave is fantastic.
Yeah, beautiful writing. That moment where she smiles and Kaladin's like, how is she doing that?
Yeah, but he actually says to her, how? And she just goes, helps to be mad. Or
and then it becomes like, oh, she's kind of hot. Like, mate,
yeah,
we didn't need to do that. No, so I like a lot. I like where the character arcs are going. I think there's a lot to be said for. I like Adolin. I think Adolin's a really cool character.
I love Adolin's. The progression of Adolin through the duels, I think, is so good. And I love the confidence where they're trying to work out like how to get around this, how to deal, how to make the light eyes toothless. And Dalinar turns to Adolin and is like, can you actually do what you're saying? And he's like,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
100%, this is completely fine. And then you get is it a 3-on-1?
4-on-1.
It's a 4-on-1.
Which I was reading that and going, I don't think at any point he specified how many people he's fighting.
No,
and I feel like that
didn't.
Should maybe be defined, or it's like out of galore, and then 4 people show, and it's like, yeah, there you go.
yeah.
But then it was like, well, obviously Kaladin, something Kaladin. Yeah, Great Lion as well. I mean,
yeah, it's a fantastic. But you also get the fantastic moment of Dalinar sort of standing there going, "What are you like? This is us. This is the opportunity for someone from a martial society to prove their worth and prove their honor.
Yeah, like what are you doing? Knight Radiant again, in your beautiful golden cloak."
And just no one does anything, and then this random Dark Eyes is like, yeah, I'll have a crack.
This random Dark Eyes essentially jumps down, drop kicks someone in shard plate, breaking both his own legs that he then instantly heals.
And no one goes, what?
Well, poor Renarin, it turns out, is stood paralyzed because his blade is screaming in his ear.
Yeah, because he's been given a proper shard blade that I'm trying to sort out the focus on this camera. He's been given a proper shard blade that's just screaming in his ear the whole time.
It made more sense. I mean, he's still a bit odd, but that's perhaps the fact of him being an Order of Radiance that seemingly no one's ever heard of.
Yeah, no, they're not. They're not a big name order. I think Sanderson, it's not in any of the books, but I think Sanderson has explained what the prerequisites to becoming a Knight Radiant are. And essentially it boils down to, you need to be a little bit broken, because you have this, I don't quite understand it. You have this thing called your spirit web, which is your representation in the spiritual realm. But in order for the bond with the spren to form, your spirit web needs to be damaged, because then the spren bond starts to stitch your spirit web back together. So you have to be broken in order to bond a spren, which I think is quite a neat way.
That's a very neat. Yeah, very neat.
And obviously the scale of break, you don't need to be Shallan level broken. Right.
What's interesting there is that clearly she had bonded her spren before she was technically broken. So there's a story about what the hell was wrong with her before then.
When she was 6.
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there is.
There is a story there.
I'm sure there is a story there. You sound like Sanderson to just leave that one hanging. I did enjoy at the end when Dalinar just decides that he is now also Radiant, right? He's just like, no, obviously I am one too. Sucks him some Stormlight, heals himself, and Kaladin's like, you know how long it took me to do that the first time around, you dick?
Sucks to suck, Kaladin. Yeah, but no, Dalinar is special even amongst Radiants by virtue of being a bondsmith. They're
Dalinar Kulin. I mean, come on. Yeah. I thought Navani was a very interesting character in this book, actually. I think she showed some very human qualities, right? As in sort of being angry at the messenger over her daughter's news of her daughter's death. But at the same time, she shows us some really cool innovation. I think we've not really seen that from anybody else, where she's actually innovating and coming up with new sort of fabrial ideas and
taking ideas and running with them. And funding science and all of these nice things.
Because there was a time for me where I was like, well, this radiant thing or the surge binding thing is sort of, it's going to supersede the Fabril idea, right? And then and the soul casting idea. But then she comes in and is like, oh, we can do really, really cool stuff with this.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's used so well in that battle where they essentially just raise some pavilions to make sure their archers can shoot. It's like that's such an elegant solution that doesn't completely overpower like the battlefield.
It's so simple and it's so basic. Right, but it's exactly what you're saying. We're using existing technology in novel ways to change the world fundamentally, which is cool to see. And it's not stuff. It's not stuff that should be in the world that doesn't exist, so that Navani can invent it. It's like it's much more kind of like taking ideas from 3 different places and bringing them together in a novel idea, which
it's actual science, which is
exactly, it's actual science, actual sort of scientific method, hypothesize, test, repeat science. It's fantastic.
Like the way Sanderson writes about this sort of stuff, I get the sense he's got some scientific background, maybe, or just very passionate about it.
I think he's very passionate. I think he's a massive geek.
Yeah, that goes without saying. That goes without saying. Have we got every major character discussed?
Szeth.
I mean, Szeth, yeah. I don't really know what to say about Szeth. That, of course, he's not dead, but...
Well, we see him at the end, don't we?
Yeah.
He's given a talking sword.
Yeah, of course, by some other sort of massively bizarre power. Because I think last time we sort of said who would be cut from the story. I think it's a much more difficult question now.
I think that's probably fair. Who could you cut?
It's much harder to answer who I care less about now. Yeah, less.
Which I think is testament to the writing, really. Or
potentially. It's funny because they're also intermingled now.
That's also true. The storylines have been pulled together neatly now from having been so disparate, which is good in my book. The story's tighter. What do you think about Taravangian then, and the smart, dumb, the power behind the throning that he's doing? Because I have to admit, when that first happened, when that was first presented to me, that completely blindsided me.
Yeah, same. For a second, I was like, "Oh, have we skipped forward in time? Like, what on earth has happened? Like, is this the Taravangian who seemingly masterminded all these assassinations and has got some sort of political agenda?" Turns out his agenda is not really political. I
like
guess
metaphysical.
Yeah, and yeah, based on this diagram that he drew, and he was apparently mega smart.
Yeah.
That's a sort of MacGuffin that scares me a little bit, right? That there is a diagram.
There's the possibility that he just one day wakes up like a super duper genius again, because Sanderson enjoys pointing out that probability doesn't work the way people think it does.
That I thought was very interesting, right? When he
it should.
At first, the story's like, "Oh, this is never going to happen again," and then I forget her name, but she essentially goes, "Well, probability works this way, so it could."
Yeah, you can have 2 1 in 10,000 events immediately after each other because of how probability works.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting way of tying Szeth into the world a bit more, though, especially when Szeth comes back and Taravangian's like, "Oh man, I'm not that smart today. How do I cope with this?"
No.
Which I thought was interesting.
I
mean, the sort of stuff that's happening in the rest of it all feels very cataclysmic, right? I mean, Yakoved is just in shambles, right? And so many other places seem to be in shambles, and as Everstorm is ripping through the world. And I found myself not caring that much. And I also got the impression that at the time no one else really cares either.
No, because we're so centralized in Alethkar, which is one of only 2 kingdoms that really seems to matter, and the other one is Yarkaved, which is gone. And
yeah, that's honestly it, right? I mean,
you've got Kerbranth, and you've got. I mean,
but Kerbranth is Taravangian, right? So,
but it's also like it's a Venice. It's a city-state. It doesn't. Venice is a terrible example. It's like a San Marino.
Yeah, with this major export being healing.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Import being healing?
Service
provision?
It's a service-based
service center. So I'm with you on that, and I also don't know if it matters that much, really. It's the classic sort of you just need some fodder to die to something horrible to make the scale seem big, right?
It kind of felt like that a little bit. We're told about lots of places, and through the interludes, we do actually see a lot of places. We see the Azir, we see Emul, we see Iriali, we see the island place, the Reshi Isles. But
I quite like the Reshi Isles.
I like the Reshi
That was a really
Isles.
odd interlude, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, go jump off a island. Don't actually. That was a stupid idea. Why did you do that? But I don't think you're meant to care about them because you haven't spent any time there, and the people in the book don't seem to care about them.
Yeah, no, very much so. Yeah,
it's very strange. It's very odd. But I think you're right. I think they're countries and nations that exist to show us that the world is really, really shit without having to do any real work to like build up yet another culture or something like that. It's very easy to go, oh, this is the like exam focused bureaucracy that's definitely not an analog for whatever it is, Song Dynasty China or whatever. But we're not going to spend any time there, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? And I still haven't quite wrapped my head around why we're reforming the Radiance. I feel like it should be obvious, but it actually isn't that obvious to me.
Because the Voidbringers are coming back, and Radiance exists to fight Voidbringers.
It's sort of just like, so what, you know?
Also, because
there was something about Mistborn, right? Because when they portrayed the Lord Ruler, and we can all agree that he's a hero. No, sorry, that he's probably a bad
misguided.
Guy. He's misguided. He just needed.
He had all the right ideas and all the wrong methods.
But I think it just frames the entire world around. Yeah, that's something we don't want. And then obviously the scales increase.
We need to do something about that.
Yeah.
But also, you're absolutely right. The Lord Ruler is so obviously evil. I have a child who's crying.
Yes, I can hear that.
I don't know. Do we pause? We're very nearly done.
That's entirely your comment. What do you want me to say about this?
I mean, I'm here on my own. I think what we should do is you should wrap up. I will drop off.
Well, I can say whatever I want.
Say whatever you want.
Fantastic.
And I will sort this out in post.
Yes.
Thanks everyone for listening. Bye.
Well, on that note, everybody, I shan't sort of say too much. It's a shame because I was hoping to get some sort of read and find out tidbits, you know, something for me to focus on in the next books. But maybe I'll ask Sean offline and we can relate it on to you, and then we'll save our continued world building in magic and how it's expanded in Words of Radiance and how we expect it to expand further some other time. So in the meantime, just thank you so much for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. No doubt we've said some things that are either objectively wrong or downright offensive. As ever, feel free to let us know, rate the podcast wherever you can, check out our Patreon for bonus content, and come chat to us on our Discord. If you're lucky, because yes, I'm also doing this line now, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes. If you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. Come back next time for some more absolute nonsense.